So I guess what occurred to me while I was making my cup of tea was we hadn't talked about the extras on that disc. I mean, it's not really within our remit, but I guess in passing, I just wanted to say that I thought the discussion, remembering Forgetting the Savages and then the feature on Innes Lloyd were probably two of the best features I've come across on that range. So I was I enjoyed watching both of those recently.
Yeah, same. I think the Remembering Forgetting piece for what I guess is one of the longer extras zipped along. Actually, I never found myself looking at the time or anything. Really, really excellent.
Yeah, I haven't watched the Innes Lloyd.
Yes, I think we reflected earlier, didn't we, that it made our conversation that bit harder because of how comprehensive that had been. But it was not so much the analysis of the story that particularly appealed to me about that documentary. That the bit where Toby Haydock went to interview Patrick Godfrey in house, I thought was just a wonderful sequence from as a touching insight to an acting couple and reflecting back. I found that a really moving sequence in the documentary, and this is the magnificent thing that we get as Doctor Who fans. We get all this documentary material, and when you think that all angles have been pursued already, you get little gems like that genuinely moved me. So it's a tremendous watch, that documentary.
And I was astonished to discover that the connections with Innes Lloyd with two of my great Yorkshire heroes, Michael Palin and Alan Bennett. So that was quite a nice. I mean, I should have known, I guess, that was part of his career, but somehow I'd never pieced it all together in my head. So it was. It feels to me like he's a guy people don't talk about. You hear about Verity Lambert and and the extraordinary impact she had on the industry, and of course people talk about Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat, maybe a bit about Barry Letts, but it feels like perhaps Innes Lloyd is a forgotten person in Doctor Who fandom, but clearly not in the industry as far as that documentary is concerned.
I really enjoyed the Christopher Barry training video as well. That's on the disc. I had seen it before because it was on the Dalek 6388 YouTube channel for a while, but yeah, really a nice of the time documentary about the making of television, the behind the scenes sort of side of television. It's a bit of a shame that, well, we sort of discovered today that it's a cut down version, unfortunately, on the disc. It's missing about 10 minutes of material versus the version that was uploaded on the Dalek 6388 channel. My gut feeling is that it's some of the Z-Cars footage might not have been clearable. If you've been following the Talking Pictures airings of Z-Cars recently, which have been great, but they have been skipping episodes, and I think the sort of conclusion that we've come to is that it's certain writers who are probably being skipped over. So I know that Anthony Reid's episodes, for example, aren't amongst the ones that are being aired. So maybe whoever wrote the episode that was being recorded during that little documentary, they couldn't clear their rights. I don't know, but a bit of a shame. But otherwise, really, really interesting. I thought really puts a lot of real meat on the bones of how this era of television was made.
Yeah.
Close is off topic. You've got this out. How close is Z-Cars to the end of its run on Talking Pictures?
About 2 seasons away. So I think we're in the third from last at the moment. Yes, we're in the first of the 2 Steel Eye Span theme-tuned seasons.
It was quite a shock when I tuned in the other day. I saw the one with the guy who took his girlfriend hostage at the racetrack.
Yes.
Which strangely was the same week as the Grand National. And I didn't know whether that was a Talking Pictures coincidence or not. But the theme tune was an absolute shock to me.
Yeah, it's their Delaware theme, I guess, but it actually stuck,
I'm going to have to look this up.
So Steel Eye Span, real band here, obviously, but the lead singer of was Alan Pryor's daughter. Alan Pryor being one of the creators of Z-Cars, and I'm guessing he put in a good word. but it's bloody awful. It's really awful. And like I say, it lasts for a solid 2 seasons, before they get to the final run and revert to a version of the original theme tune, which is much more pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, I vaguely remember Zcast from my youth. It was sort of still going. I mean, I'm not sure that I ever watched an episode, but you'd have seen it in the coming up tonight sort of thing on Saturday evenings on BBC One. Previously on Something Who. Welcome to the podcast where we take something old, a Doctor Who story from the original series, compare it with something new, one from the new series, and add something borrowed to make Something Who. Hello, I'm Richard, and we're back with Something Who podcast, where this time we're looking at 2 stories about exploitation. Initially, we'll look at missing First Doctor adventure and recent animation, The Savages, from Season 3, and later on we'll examine 10th Doctor outing New Earth from Series 2. And with me to decide whether these stories give you a bit of a boost or just leave you feeling wiped out, we have a fine panel of superior beings. Starting with science and astronomy writer and the person who proposed our format, it's Giles.
Good evening.
And next we have Lego enthusiast and long-time fan. We can't keep him away. It's Rick.
Yes, I am back. And what a pair of stories. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Excellent. And finally, we cornered him in the bar at Riverside Studios. We wouldn't take no for an answer. It's vintage TV enthusiast Jim Trenowden. Hello, Jim.
Hello, thank you for having me. Lovely to be here.
Excellent. Yeah, well, you're here for our youth audience, being several decades younger than me, at least.
I'll take that.
Okay, well, look, let's talk about New Earth, written by Russell T Davies and directed by James Hawes. And look, we're back on well-worn territory here. If I have watched New Earth more than once before the last couple of weeks, it was immediately after broadcast. At the time, it seemed quite slight to me as a story. I wasn't particularly looking to have a revisit, and I have this terrible habit of putting something down and not picking it up again. But I have to say, I enjoyed watching it again. So, you know, if sticking it to one side for 19 years has given me a pleasant experience this time, then it was worth it.
Yeah, I would have watched this as it went out on the day of broadcast. Again, didn't think much. I didn't think it's awful. It's a bit slight, as you say. Probably, actually, though, given how exciting having Doctor Who back was in the year, I probably did watch it quite soon again afterwards. Mm-hmm. I think I was doing that for every episode at the time. And I think I've probably seen it quite a few times since. I've done a few watch-throughs of Modern Who since it came back. One as part of that big 50th watch-through that I mentioned in the last section. And then actually, again, in lockdown, I did a watch-through of New Who up to the end of the Capaldi era and sort of stopped, not deliberately, just found myself drifting away when we got to the Jodie era. But, so I feel like, I feel quite familiar with this one.
So watched it on broadcast. Like Jim, we'll have watched it quite a few times in the aftermath. And it was in a run, I think that the opening 4 episodes, New Earth, Tooth's Claw, School Reunion, Go in the Fireplace, I view as a relatively idyllic run.
Yeah.
It's definitely a comfort watch. So I've returned to that quite a few times. But when I reflected on watching it the other week, it's probably been, 6-7 years since I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So it did have a slight air of freshness to it when I watched it ahead of this.
I'm probably, like Richard, that I would have watched it on transmission and probably did watch it a couple of times afterwards. And obviously there were at the time, BBC Three repeats were pretty much ubiquitous. So we stumbled across it a couple of times by accident. So I would have felt very familiar with it then. I think I wouldn't have deliberately revisited it so much. I certainly haven't seen it in a good 15 years or so, and I don't think I'd revisited it all that much after those next 2 or 3 episodes came along, and kind of those all blew me away. So it's just like that was the stuff I was probably going to go back and watch in preference to. So this one slightly fell by the wayside as a bit inconsequential, and because I particularly have a lot of time for the trilogy that comes up next. Not really a trilogy, but 3 stories.
Yeah. So I've said this more than once, but every time I see this set of titles and the music, I think fantastic. It seemed every time they mucked about with it, they seemed to make it worse. I just found that a really excellent opening.
Mm.
Well, of course, it's after the cold open where they're going further than they've ever been before, but only very slightly, only 27 years further than they've ever been before. If 5 billion is a precise number, of course, which it may or may not be, but 5 billion and 27 is very precise.
Mm. Well, they probably held off switching off the generators and letting the sun burn up the earth until they thought 5 billion was a nice round number to celebrate its birthday and by having a big fireworks display.
Yeah.
End of the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring out a little bit of Yorkshire kind of sensibilities here, but if it's the 15th New York, doesn't that make it the 16th York?
Mm.
True. Mm.
And I think, according to my transcripts site that I use for this, that's 14 news and a York.
Oh, right.
Which suggests that it's the 15th with York in Yorkshire as the first one.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Not even
the transcripts could be wrong. I haven't counted it coming out of the lips of David Tennant. Sorry.
It's not even the first New Earth, is it? Presumably the founders of this planet have been speaking to Sir Charles Grover back in the 70s.
Brilliant.
Oh, God. Yeah,
and he only manages 2 news for the new Doctor, where really it's the new.
Yes,
We're going to have to go through that debate of how many Doctors there were before.
Yeah.
New,
Talking of debates, though, one thing that did come flooding back to my mind watching those opening scenes was all these people that would have these very weird arguments in the first couple of years of Doctor Who. Oh, they never go to alien planets. They never, and we would be arguing that this isn't an alien planet because it's called New Earth. To hell with the fact that it's like cat people and all these weird creatures and so. Oh, it's not proper aliens for some random reason. Was
it custom built?
More important that they have a completely different evolutionary.
Yeah. Is it custom built by Magrathea or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it seemed, it was such a hot topic of debate for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
I think. And they said, well, the Satan pit, finally, a new alien planet. And I said, yeah, but it's not really a planet, is it? It's a little asteroid orbiting a black hole. And that didn't count because it was an asteroid or something like that. And it had humans in it. Yeah, weird hang up.
Applegrass was a nice touch, wasn't it?
Applegrass
made me smile.
I was going to say, I quite like that we return to this era almost straight away in Tennant's run, though.
Mm.
Given that New Who's very new at this point, and Regeneration's very new, I think returning to some of its immediate past, it's probably quite a good idea in terms of selling to the audience that this is the same character, this is the same show. This is, this is shorthand these days. Everyone understands Regeneration again, but after 16 years off the air. The general public probably did need a bit of reassurance that this was more of last year's show. This wasn't a complete change of everything. And I think bringing back some of their characters and settings is really quite a smart move, actually.
Yes, I think there was a real confidence in terms of the setup to this story. And I do find that remarkable for the reasons you described, Jim, and also because I think what we do know of the first season was it was a pretty torrid slog for that production team. This was the school of hard knocks in terms of learning how to produce the show. And here we are only a few months later, returning with a bit of swagger, a bit of confidence, direction, and the fact that they knew they could draw upon those familiar things to shorthand ease the audience into that season. We talked earlier about the latest series of Doctor Who, starting its second season, if we believe that counting mechanism, doesn't quite seem to have the same swagger and confidence, bizarrely, that this episode has. It has a real assurance about it when I watched it. It does. It's not heavy-handed with its references. The departure from Jackie and Mickey is quite offhand and feels quite casually done. There's no huge histrionic in that scene, and the way that slowly Cassandra, the spider robot, come into the new Earth setup doesn't feel heavy-handed. Feels a very natural turn of events. I'm pretty sure at the time, and certainly when I watched it again, felt that this was just safe hands, safe ground. I knew where I was. And it allows the adventure to become the focus, not the mechanics of how do we start a season. Yeah.
We forget perhaps how impossible a job it is now for anyone producing Doctor Who. So when it came back in 2005, yes, there were tens of thousands of fans who were kind of heavily invested, but nobody really, I guess, had huge expectations of it. And then suddenly it came back and it was an extraordinary success. And so you start the second series, and I guess the production team have a right perhaps to have a little bit of a swagger in their step and think, we are in charge of the one of the great hits of the era on telly, which a lot was invested in it. The BBC bringing it back hoped it would be a success, but I don't think they could have imagined it would be such a runaway success. And now, because it has been such a success, well, a huge success for 15 years and then a fair success for the last 5, it's very hard, I think, because the expectation, particularly with Disney money, is it's going to be extraordinary, and it can't be extraordinary every week.
It's an interesting comparison, actually, to the current version of the show, the Disney version of the show, because we're about the same amount of time in to this new era as New Earth is to the second run of Doctor Who, if we're phrasing it like that. Yeah. And I think there's me banging on about how it's great that version of the show, the RTD1 era of the show, came up with this internal continuity, and it was nice to lean back on that. But I think they have the entire opposite problem now in the current era. I think if they'd taken that opportunity of the season renumbering and all that to really almost ditch a lot of the continuity, would be at the point where starting to refer back to season 1 things would be quite nice. As it is, we had constant references to Susan, we had Sutek coming back. and it feels like they've forgotten what was so successful the first time around, really. That you can have some continuity, you should have some continuity, but kind of with yourself, and relying on things from 50, 60 years ago doesn't really appeal to the kids, I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. I mean, that is the most extraordinary part of last year, isn't it? That in bringing back Sutek, well, in bringing back the name of Sutek, there's not much of what came back was very similar to the original. As you say, it was a fairly small part of the audience who would have remembered that. Okay, so I guess people go back and watch the original series, having become fans in the interim. But yeah, it wasn't going to bring a huge new audience to the show. Odd.
Yeah, I mean, we're only a couple of episodes away from School Reunion, dipping totally into the archives for Sarah Jane Smith. But I think by the time we get to school reunion to Judgment, the 10th Doctor and Rose are absolutely a coherent partnership in this. And again, one of the things that I know we've had the Christmas invasion, but 10th Doctor spends most of his time asleep in bed. They really hit their mark from scene one in the TARDIS. Just a real chemistry. And when they are not in the body swapping elements of the story, but are the 10th Doctor and Rose, like I say, it's just straight from the off, seamless partnership that just ignites in this story. It feels an easier relationship than the Ninth and Rose was in series one. It felt to me at the time, and definitely feels on rewatch, it's just stepped up its game.
Well, I think we do have the benefit of Rose having been around for a year. Yes, I guess in theory this is a new Doctor and a slightly different relationship, but really these are the same two characters that we were hanging around with last year, and they've got some history, right? I think, going back to the current version of the show, there's a assumed shorthand that the Doctor and the Companion are friends, but you don't really see them earn it. Whereas I suppose you're seeing that more with Belinda now, but but certainly with Ruby, it just felt like they met and they were friends because they had to be.
Yeah,
and I always wonder if there'd been a year of if we'd had Ruby as the main companion this year, would it have felt a bit more earned somehow? Because it does feel earned in New Earth, I think, to the point where there's almost a level of smuggery, I think, between the Doctor and Rose in this episode, and certainly later
worse,
on,
isn't it?
Yeah, I think that Applegrass scene, you can already see Rose properly fancying the Doctor, and it's a bit icky. I don't know, just because he looks like a young, conventionally attractive human. He's still 1,000 years old or whatever, and it's a bit weird, isn't it? I don't know.
Doesn't he look young?
I really
believe.
Yeah, I really did notice that.
Quite
I guess because we've just
this
seen him in the recent 60th specials.
Yeah.
Suddenly going back to the start. He looks like a baby, doesn't he?
Even compared to later, when it's later episodes, certainly in series 3 and 4, maybe even later this year, it feels like he's that bit more mature. Maybe the hair starts to.
He's not that young though, is he? He's sort of mid to late 30s in this, isn't he?
Yes, yeah. No, he just looks.
But he has a fresh face for sure.
Callow youth. Yeah.
It's quite an interesting choice, actually, saying that this is David Tennant's first proper story, to have him be playing a different character for a chunk of it.
Yeah.
You say, as I say, he's in bed for a lot of his first actual episode. He plays a different character for a chunk of this one, and then he's playing a sort of Scottish lens on his second episode, isn't he? So it takes a while till he plays the Doctor with his proper accent for an entire episode, really, which is curious.
Yes. Although when I see things like when he first goes into Ward 26 in the episode and he's starting to get a sniff that something isn't quite right with the whole setup, he really is on beat, the Doctor, from the off. I think that's it's really impressive. It doesn't. Somebody may on this panel know what the filming order was for this series, but it feels like he's had a couple of goes to get himself to that level of doctorishness, but it's there straight from the off.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Tennant as the Doctor, but in terms of the characterisation, in terms of his characterisation, it's there right away.
Yeah.
Talking about the little shop and going into the ward and all that, the Tennant that we think of as the Doctor is there straight away, and that is quite impressive. Actually, there's no building up to it, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's quite noticeable with the Christmas invasion that when he eventually does. Where he just explodes off the screen in the last 10 or 15 minutes there, and it's sort of similar here. So yes, it isn't at all problematic, I think, for the audience to accept a new Doctor, because he's just so effective.
Mm.
Yeah.
It was, in fact, first production block.
Right.
This Christmas Invasion and School Reunion
Right.
were all directed by James Hawes, and they were the first block of series 2.
It's interesting with the way that this is portrayed. So we're in the year 5 billion and goodness knows what, but it's all drips, isn't it? And fluids in the wards. It's, I mean, I don't know kind of where the nanoparticles fit in empty child and so on, but it's definitely a different sort of technology.
Well, they're still using the same lifts as in 2005, apparently, aren't they? Our favourite lift scene returns. Yeah.
Well, yes, yeah.
I love lifts in Doctor Who. They're never there just to be lifts, are they? They always have. If you're going to go to the effort of building one, they're going to do something great. And this is a lift that is great, not just once, but right through the episode. It is a means of separating the companions.
Yeah.
It's a means of humour in terms of the first disinfection scene.
Yeah.
It is the device that delivers the cure to successfully bring the situation to an end. And it is the James Bond Mission Impossible empty lift shaft scene to show the 10th Doctor as that all-action hero. So, thumbs up once again for a quality Doctor Who lift.
Yeah.
Chekhov's lift. If it appears in the first act, you will have to rappel down the lift cable in the third act.
I did, in fairness, start listing important Doctor Who lift.
Right.
And the list is too long. I thought I was onto something a bit
You should do a
niche.
website about that.
Yeah.
Tons of them.
The
series.
The lift list. I like it.
But
yeah,
very good. And
you can elevate our conversation some other time.
Hey.
Yes. Well, and talking of familiar-looking things, of course, the intensive care area is also where they keep the nestines. In those, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought, I've seen that. I've seen those stairs before. When they started going down there. So already, we're only a year into New Who, and already I'm recognising familiar bits of Cardiff.
But I like that look and feel, and I think sometimes Doctor Who makes those choices, doesn't it? To live in with present day familiar things as that shorthand into the episode, and I like those lovely colourful bags against the white clinical background. I think it worked really well.
Yeah, visually it's good. I mean, it's fascinating how we're making these connections with the episodes that have just aired. But again, we've got a film projector in this, just like in Lux. Because I've made a note before, 2 weeks before I watched Lux, saying, has anyone checked to see if Cassandra's got the missing episodes? I know that's exactly what everyone was thinking when we see the archive of film cans in Lux, although, of course, it's 1952, so it couldn't be anything there. But there you go.
Just Metropolis.
That's what it is, yeah. And I mean, there's that lovely, when Rose encounters Cassandra, there's the lovely talking through your arse joke.
There's lots of cheeky wordplay in this.
They do a couple of those, don't they? Yes.
It was certainly an era where the different tones were effortlessly woven together. I think the writing is just a joy. It's not just the wordplay; it's the changes in tone of the episode. All seem to sit comfortably next to each other. It's just I can't emphasize enough just what a joyful watch it was, and what a great era that second season was in terms of storytelling.
So Cassandra Rose turns into Cassandra, well, one way or the other, and she says, I'm a chav. Apparently this was word of the year in 2004, which I guess is sort of when this is being filmed, or maybe it's early 2005. But of course, I mean, nobody's said that word in at least a decade.
No.
But yeah, so it's again, it takes you back to a particular time and place.
It does start off that process, though, of categorizing the value of human beings against each other, which the episode continually does. So, yeah, I'm a chav. There's also that class to brass line later on.
Yes, yeah.
There's lots of ways that the created human species is described, whether they're like some subhumans, they're described as a subspecies, and also Chip is referenced in a number of derogatory categorizations by Cassandra, described as always a forced grown life form. He's only a half life. And there's this constant evaluation of humanity and its worth that forms that underpin of the perspective of the story, really. And again, it's not sledgehammered into the text. It just happens in a very naturalistic way. And if you look out for it, it's happening all the time in that story, re-emphasizing in gentle ways what's really underpinning, as I say, what you're being asked to evaluate as a viewer.
Well, I'd rather forgotten that was Cassandra's shtick, was that she was the only pure human
Yep.
at the time, and that's the last surviving, and no one else counted. Yeah.
It's rather good luck then that Rose, I guess, is the only other pure human in her lives.
Yes, indeed, yes.
Well, she's got this handy body transfer machine hanging around.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if they got that from the elders, it's not quite the same, is it? But it's not. It's kind of similar.
Handy that once the machine has worked, you don't actually need the machine apparatus again for the remainder of the episode.
No, that's true.
That's another important point.
Yeah. And then in a nod perhaps to Dodo, Cassandra goes all Dick Van Dyke in Rose's body. Although it also presages the fact that Billy Piper can't do Rose's accent in season 4 either.
Good point.
It's quite an interesting one, actually, though, isn't it? That Cassandra is the most prominent guest character in this episode, and yet Zoe Wanamaker is barely in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that is true. I think it's also a nice touch. Well, I like the old cine footage when it happens of her. I like the atmosphere that creates. Although again, bizarre that they've managed to hold themselves out in the hospital unobserved in this lower level and brought in, as you say, a transference device, a cine camera, and other gadgets unnoticed. But it does create a lovely atmosphere for that reveal of Cassandra at the time, and a contrast very much with what's going on in Ward 26 up above, and that whole clean lobby look. It is very contrived, but I'm prepared to indulge them in that because it's visually appealing.
So apparently they had to schedule around Zoe Wanamaker's availability, and at one point they were thinking about they might have just rewritten it as Cassandra's secret sister, who hadn't been mentioned before, who was out for revenge, in order so they could cast another actress if it had come to it. But yes, it's nice to get to see her in.
I think what we get works though, doesn't it? I mean, the body swapping is quite fun, especially I think Billy Piper probably gets a lot out of the body swapping concept. She gets a lot of fun bits to do.
Yes.
So I don't know what order that turned up in, whether it was Zoe Wanamaker's only available a bit, let's write in the body swap, or the other way around. But it's probably one of the stronger aspects of the elements. Probably one of the stronger aspects of the episode. Yeah.
I think as well they don't try and play those points straight. They do. That is always an opportunity for a degree of humour throughout, and I think that's exactly the way to play it. A bit of the opposite to what I said about the Savages being probably, in hindsight, first time people might have seen that kind of transference type storyline in a show. It definitely wasn't the first time I've seen Telefantasy try body swapping, and it got away with it better than many other examples I can think of which I will offer you Quantum Leap and that the final episode of Star Trek, the original series, where William Shatner is appalling in his body swap routine. So, it is played for what it is. I'm sure the actors had great fun. And by playing it humorously from body swap to body swap, you then get that jarring final body swap of Cassandra's to the body of one of the plague victims. And, that provides quite a poignant change of perspective for that character that takes us to the kind of coda scene.
Apparently it came from, he wanted to bring back Cassandra, but because she'd been popular, but the actual, doing the Cassandra skin thing had been quite complex and time consuming. So that's where the idea of, let's just body swap her into other people came from. Limited amount of time that you had to have the skin thing operating. And also because Billy was apparently agitating to have some stuff that was a bit more fun, something more fun to do, having had to be, having been put through the ringer a bit in the previous series. So,
well, then of course it meant we got the excellent destroyed Cassandra action figure from Character Options, which is the true benefit of this story.
Yes, yeah. Talking of action figures, though, I'm surprised. I am actually a bit surprised that the Mox of Balhoun doesn't turn up in this, given that they sort of revisit, because you've got Cassandra and you've got Face of Bow, and given that there's sort of so much publicity around the Mox of Balhoun, which is a nothing character, which is a non-character, but it accidentally became one of the faces of the new series, just by virtue of featuring an awful lot of publicity stills and things like that, and being made into a toy. Yeah, I'm almost surprised they didn't sort of course correct on that and say, a bit like George Lucas, and okay, let's mind the story behind every single bloody skiff guard, and put the Mox of Balhoun in, and actually give him something to do this time or something. But
did he survive the end of the world? I can't remember.
Good question, actually.
I genuinely can't recall. No. I can picture him getting zapped by some strong light as a blind comes down, but I might be making that up.
There's a question.
But again, mysterious brother that no one knew about.
Yes, yeah. Okay. Well, apparently there's an audio called the Hawks of Balhoun. Another one of the series. So, good over us.
Just as a point of information, the Mox of Balhoun got fried by the glare of the sun.
He did get fried
in the observation gallery.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But his action figure lives on.
He could have been the Pox in this one, I suppose.
Pox about, well, fair.
Yeah, I see we did
on
that.
brand.
Yeah. So the Catnons are rather more callous than Jano and the Elders, because their first thought when it starts to get out of control is to incinerate, and they're not.
Yes.
They're not going to tolerate any mucking about.
No.
Yeah.
And it's odd. That is a slightly odd element of it, isn't it? Which they seem to have taken it upon themselves to heal the human beings on New Earth. But their ruthless mechanism to achieve that is to create a new sub-human race. Hide that from the humans who are definitely not complicit to it in this story. So there is that active contradiction between them going out of their way to be hugely kind and going out of their way to be absolutely horrific. And it's one of the slightly bizarre elements of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, now you come to mention it, it is an extraordinarily complicated way to heal people, isn't it?
Or actually a remarkably successful way of doing it.
Well, Well, this sort of suggests they've tried everything else, and this was the only thing they could come up with that worked, wasn't it?
And then maybe they did it just with a couple of test subjects, and then it just started getting out of hand.
But again, there's this idea of them being like cattle, isn't there? The clones are force grown, and they're not real people.
Yes, yeah.
So I guess that's, I mean, entirely wrongly, obviously morally, but I guess that's where they come from. This aspect of, they're not doing any harm because we grew them. They're not real. They're they're like a lab grown steak or something.
Yes. Yeah.
Albeit loosely clothed and clean shaven.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Actually, shouldn't they going around and give them a nice little nice little trim?
But yes, I mean it is astonishing, and it was an element that I'd kind of put to the back of my mind. When I said there were elements of it that just jolted back into my memory when I rewatched the episode. The scale of that factory of remedies, if you will, took me aback. I'd kind of forgotten just how industrial that was. It really creates a sense, a bit like I was talking about in The Savages, where there was a scientific ruthlessness to what the elders were doing. There's a scientific ruthlessness to what the cat people are doing. There's no ambiguity around whether what they're doing is right or wrong, or whether they know what they're doing. They absolutely know what they're doing. They're absolutely making the choice that this is the way that they are going to resolve this problem. There's no, we accidentally stumbled into this circumstance. This is a whole range of decisions made clinically that have got them to this situation. And when you end up naturally as a viewer judging them on that basis, unequivocally, you know that they're in the wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of kind of similar, I suppose, to the last one we talked about, the rebel flesh. You've created a thing that gets past some problem, but you don't stop to worry about how it feels about the situation because you don't regard it as being a form of life in itself.
I will say I don't quite understand what the ongoing relationship between the cats and the infected people is in that regard. I think, talking about the Savages, there is a continual need to drain the humans.
Yeah.
Whereas the things that the infected in this episode are infected with seem to be things that they already have cures for. We see that at the end because when they're slopping all the IVs together and just spreading it around, it cures them, right? So what is the need to have this ongoing supply of people infected with things they have the cure for? I don't really understand why they still have them.
I don't think they can recreate all those cures synthetically. Their means of production of those cures is that supply of quote-unquote subhumans.
And so are they actually draining something from these humans?
I think that's the implication. I don't know. They get chicken pox, and you harvest a strain of chicken pox from them, inject it into the patient in a small enough dose that their body can build up an immunity, and off they go. Would be my pseudoscience rationalisation of that. I'm open to challenge on that one, but that's kind of what my brain told me before I had to go to sleep that night.
So, how about the people of New York? Are they kind of willfully blind to this, or is the miraculous cure that the cat people offer something they should naturally be suspicious of, or should they? Are they just? Is it reasonable for them to think, oh yeah, the cats know what they're doing. Let's, we're happy with that. We'll pay them the money for using the hospital.
I think there's a insinuation that the Sisters of Plenitude already have a reputation for kind of healing and looking after people prior to this. So perhaps the people of New York just took them at face value and said, of course you can cure everything. We've heard about you lots. I don't know, though. It's a good point.
I think there is an implication that no humans know about this, I think was the line. So I guess there's kind of a slight naivety to this, but I'm prepared to absolutely go with Jim's view that the cats are viewed as having a greater knowledge of these matters, and therefore what a lucky relationship we're in with experts in their field.
Yeah.
And indeed, at the end, the cats are arrested when everyone finds out. So, I mean, admittedly, it took everything going wrong and the place already being in tatters, I guess, by the end of it for that to happen. But it does make you wonder if this had slipped in a less kind of elaborate fashion, if someone had leaked it to the press, would the police have turned up and ended it anyway,
Yeah. And it's not like they're abducting people to be their test subjects. There's no suspicion there. The line that I was referring to was Cassandra, who was in Rose at the time, said, just to confirm, none of the humans in the city actually know about this question. And Nurse Haim says, we thought it best not. And they were right to think best not, because as soon as the human did find out about this, as you say, Jim, police arrive, off they go.
Fine.
And in fact, now you've said that jogged my memory that actually Cassandra was going to use the kind of leaking of that to her advantage, wasn't she? She was going to leak it, that this was what was going on. She wanted money from the nuns, didn't she? So
so the people here are on higher moral ground than, say, Avon and Flower in the Savages.
Yes, yes. The setup of the mystery, the Doctor has that great scene with the Duke of Manhattan.
Yep.
Who's on his way to being turned to stone, I believe, and it cured. But actually, the mystery is first planted by the TARDIS.
Oh, yes.
And I don't think I've watched any of them in years, and I dug out a YouTube medley of TARDIS. And what bizarre things they were. And I was struck by a couple of things about it. One was, I can remember at the time, my modem taking an absolute lifetime just to load up 1 minute of video. And the one for this episode is quite good. It shows somebody on the brink of death and then suddenly being up and about and fine. But there were some pretty rubbish TARDIS that I waited an inordinate amount of time for my modem to release. But it got me thinking that actually at the moment where one of the target audiences for Doctor Who is the younger audience, who are all on TikTok and Snapchat and what have you. That sort of thing, that kind of TARDIS type format, you think would absolutely be how Doctor Who could go about infecting itself into the younger audiences of today. So amazingly innovative 20 years ago, and something I'm surprised isn't in their arsenal in the relaunch.
That's a really good point, actually. Yeah. And actually, I guess there's something else that's crossed my mind recently with modern Who being ahead of its time is the plethora of spin-offs that they had in the first RTD run. We had Torchwood, we had the Sarah Jane Adventures, we had, I suppose, the K9 series, if you're being generous. And this seems like something that is quite modern, having this suite of kind of linked programs. You look at Marvel, you look at Star Wars, you look at Star Trek at the moment, and having lots and lots of different threads all year round for a streaming service feels quite modern. But Doctor Who was doing it 20 years ago nearly. And again, it sounds like they kind of had this idea to kind of do it this time around. We do have a spin-off coming, I suppose, but perhaps hasn't landed in the same way. But interesting that those ideas were there 20 years ago.
Sadly, I think the economics of it were just so different in terms of what the BBC could afford to produce on its own. And that's the thing.
But then is 1 minute of TARDIS Ode that big of an expense? I don't know.
No. I was thinking about that the spin-offs and everything like that.
So they haven't come back really.
And
actually, we don't really get many episodes at all now, do we? They kind of came back a bit during the Moffat era, didn't they? But seem to have gone away again.
Oh yes, yeah.
it's interesting. I guess what it's showing is that you can try, I guess, to have lightning strike twice, but it's, you put together a lot of the same elements, but it doesn't necessarily take hold in the same way.
I'd like to talk about the ending. Sandra, the idea that Doctor would be complicit to a paradox where Cassandra in the body of Chip meets younger Cassandra, describes her in really moving terms as beautiful. It's a really well played scene. But that is in effect Cassandra saying to herself, "You're beautiful," and Cassandra having trailed this as being the last time that anyone ever called her beautiful, and probably set off that chain of events that ends up with you being a stretched piece of your backside in a metal frame.
Yes, yeah.
But as I say, the bizarre thing about that setup is, the Doctor arranges it almost.
So what about the Blinovich time limitation or whatever? I guess either it applies or it doesn't. And in this case, it doesn't.
Different bodies, perhaps? Maybe.
It's the Hargreaves rule, I expect.
One little thing I did note and like about that is it also, there's a little bootstrap, not quite a bootstrap paradox, but when we're first introduced to Chip, and Cassandra says, "Oh, my favourite pattern."
Yeah.
That's why she's, her favourite pattern of clothing or something like that. And you see, oh, that's why. Yes.
But where did the pattern come from? Yes.
Yes. Yeah. True. Oh, yeah. Okay. So it is a bootstrap paradox.
Yeah. So I mean, we've discussed it a bit, but it's clearly a tour de force for Billie Piper. It's sort of a bit like her version of Janet Fielding doing Kinder. She gets a chance, I guess, to, well, not necessarily to explore Rose further because she's largely being Cassandra, but nonetheless it gives her slightly more interesting stuff to play with. And
it's amazing. It's amazing the effect she can have with one undone top button.
Yeah. Yeah, what would JNT say?
Yes.
No hanky panky, eh? It kind of knocks the kiss in the TV movie into cocked hat as well, really.
Yes. No, I think you're right. It's a great outing for Billie Piper. It's an opportunity to just have a bit of fun.
Face of Bow, I guess, so we got the Face of Bow returning, but all very mysterious and fundamentally setting things up, I suppose, for Gridlock rather than doing anything very much in this episode.
Well, this is it. He feels the benefit of hindsight like a really important character, but he's barely in The End of the World. He's barely in this. It's only when he eventually does kind of deliver his message in Gridlock that he finally becomes something, really. Anything even vaguely approaching a character, almost.
Yeah, he almost, should we say he, almost is more notable for the "is this Captain Jack or not Captain Jack" moment that comes, a year or so even after that. What I would say for Face of Bow is they get good value out of those characters from End of the World. He's a really visually exciting character when he appears in End of the World. Does get an action figure as well for counting, but looks great in this episode, and it is a good example of the ambition of the series at that time. They were looking for things that were other than actors in rubber suits. There's a real, I think there's a real wow factor about the Face of Bow.
And talking about getting use out of that prop, I think it's a nice bit of world building again. I think in Satellite 5 or the news footage in the previous season, he appears very briefly there, doesn't he? So
yes,
they come up with their own lore quite quickly in New Who, don't they? They're not constantly dipping into the past, and he already, even by now, even by New Earth, feels like a recurring character, even though has he even said a word before this episode? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
so apparently RTD decided that because they commissioned Series 2 was commissioned and the Christmas special was commissioned in February 2005. So they knew they were doing Series 2 before they'd had Series 1.
Right.
And then they commissioned Series 3 in June, which I think was hard on the heels of the finale. I think they pretty much then announced and commissioned that. So at that point, Russell T, he had originally planned to have the reveal of the prophecy would be in this episode. And then when he knew he had a third series, postponed it to knowing he'd come back to it. Yeah. Come back to New Earth again. Which begs it does, because if the prophecy on Shannon Sullivan's site, which is usually drawing on things like the comedic history and so on, suggests that the message was always you're not alone, which would really have left that out there dangling if that had been revealed in Series 2 and yet we hadn't gone anywhere with it in Series 2.
Yeah, I presume that doesn't mean that we were going to get the Master in Series 2. So actually, if anything, I think the pacing that we do get between the reveal, between that message and the payoff, it's probably a lot better than what we could have had, actually. Certainly, I think more casual viewers would have it fresher in their heads.
Yes, yeah. And by the time we get it, we've had the first few mentions of Saxon, haven't we?
Yes.
Because that comes up in
Christmas Invasion.
Runaway Bride and... No, not Christmas Invasion, but it comes up in Runaway Bride. And
does he not get? Oh God, I need to rewatch this here. I thought he got mentioned in the Christmas Invasion. Did he not?
Because I think Harriet Jones is responsible for Torchwood zapping the Sycorax.
You're probably right.
I think there's a line in the Runaway Bride about. I think one of the tank commanders when they're opening fire on the star. The star
that
thing.
Sounds right. That sounds right.
The Ragnar star thing. So there are orders from Mr. Saxon or something, with the implication that he's somewhere in defence or something that has at the time, unless the chronology is even more complicated than we think. And then it comes up again in there's at least one reference in Smith and Jones, I think. So anyway, sorry, that's neither. It's a bit of a diversion.
So again, I think we end up with not many deaths in this episode. I think there are a few though, aren't there? But the body count is quite low. Certainly the infected, other than the chap who gets burnt up at the start, all survive by having that IV stuff slightly smeared on them. And I suppose a few of the people in the hospital side, but the vast majority, you'd think this is going to be a bloodbath episode in some regards, don't you? But it does feel like the body count's relatively low, actually. Presumably the people who get infected by the infected die? Or do they just become more infected?
I don't know, they could drop dead.
Yeah. So the people who die in the episode are the people who are touched by the infected people before the doctor administers his Omnicure. But then in releasing all the humans from captivity, you lose your supply of ability to fight the incurable diseases present on New Earth. So you do kind of then condemn lots of people in the coming years and decades to death by previously curable diseases. So
I don't think that's followed up on in Gridlock, is it? That could have been an interesting through thread. You know, the Doctor releasing all of the... it's Cassandra actually released all of them, I guess, wasn't it? But releasing all the infected, leading to this kind of sickly population, perhaps, you know.
Yeah, although there is that drug culture type situation that might be, you know, black market medication. And you've got sudden overpopulation causing people to get in their Volkswagen campers and sit in traffic.
Yeah, that's the point. Given that we return to this planet, we don't hear anything more about the new humans, do we? Which is a shame.
Yes. Although I do like Gridlock for its courage to go back to that planet to provide that contrast to the relationship between the 10th Doctor and Martha versus the 10th Doctor and Rose. It very accurately sets the tone that Martha is going to get the bad deal out of the companion experiences.
Yeah.
It's a neat narrative approach by RTD, and it returns us to the spot where naturally, as you say, Jim, we can meet the face of Bo, and he can tell all or set a cryptic clue that would not be amiss on 321. But yeah, so New Earth, I really enjoyed it, and I suspect I will barrel on to Tooth and Claw, Cool Reunion with Heavy Heart, and then Girl in the Fireplace. It's reminded me what a good run of stories they were.
Yeah, nice little romp, this one.
Yeah.
I shan't leave it 15 years to rewatch it again.
I'll hold you to that, Giles.
Well, hopefully. Anyway.
I'm making no.
Set my alarm for that.
Yeah. I'm making no such promise, but I did enjoy it. I think what I'm discovering generally when I revisit the new show is that my appreciation for it has increased over time. Anything else about this one, or are we ready to move on to shared themes?
No. Shared themes, Richard. Have you got a list?
Jim suggested this pairing, I think.
Yeah.
So
I've got
maybe you should kick off. What was the original inspiration? Was it the body swaps?
I think it was the body swaps that I originally thought. But they all kind of started barreling. As we discussed, you've got a kind of elite class performing medical experiments on a lower class to keep themselves vital. You've got the body swapping. You've got a far future society.
Yeah.
Very far future in theory. You've got a being that is aware of the Doctor's journeys before they land, obviously with the Elders and Bowface.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. You've got people in questionable face paint. And the only other thing I had off the top of my head was the next time we see New Earth, it's being menaced by Macra, which were another Ian Stuart Black creation.
Yeah.
Nice.
I am going to offer a slightly obscure one that may be disproven by you. So here goes. I think that the planet's surface in the Savages is the first location shooting of an alien world in Classic Who. I'm looking at your faces here to see whether we're okay with that. And I also think that the shot of them lying on Applegraph in New Earth is the first location shooting of an alien world in New Who.
Ooh.
Seems right.
Yeah, seems legit.
Nice. I mean, that's a grade 1, obscure fact. I like that.
I mean, Richard, it was that kind of tribute is what I woke up this morning hoping would happen to me. And I seem to have gone through a whole day's work with no colleague saying that about my insightful work. So thank you for saving me just after midnight.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've discussed it really, but in both cases there's a utopia, a sort of false narrative of everything's lovely, and then you sort of poke at the edges and discover that it's all a little bit more murky than it looks.
Yeah,
and in both cases, but let's face it, this is just Doctor Who. The Doctor is the one who kind of uncovers, the fact that there is an issue, there's a problem. After my last effort, I asked the AI again to see what it thought it could find. It wanted to talk about colonialism in both the Savages and in New Earth. it believes the savages explicitly mirrors colonial practices. We talked about that earlier, with the elders exploiting the savages for their life force, which reflects, says co-pilot, the dehumanization and systematic oppression inherent in colonialism. However, New Earth, it says, critiques colonialism through systematic exploitation rather than direct allegory. I think it's overreaching myself a little bit there, but I'm interested to hear your views on that.
Well, I think as an antidote to your AI response, I'll offer you a final connection, which is I don't think the Elder City had a shop either.
And we've both got companions with wandering accents.
Fantastic. So are we saying that the elders have cured capitalism, if that is indeed a disease? Well,
it occurred to me that the savages could be like read as an AI allegory these days, potentially, but I haven't really put the work in on that. So,
and which takes us to our AI generator in Robot Revolution.
Yay. Yeah, all links up.
We done?
Yeah, I think so.
Jim, that really good pairing.
Thanks. Yeah,
enjoyed it for all moments.
Yeah,
nice to have you with us for it. Yeah,
indeed.
Thanks for having me. Yeah,
well, it's great. Yeah, to I mean, not that I'm saying anything against other people who regularly appear on this podcast, but it's just nice to have a fresh person appear, offer new perspectives.
Mix things up.
Yeah. I love all of the collaborators on Something Who. Thanks for listening to Something Who. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate and review our podcast, and please let us know what you liked about it. If you check out our feed, there's many more that you can listen to while you're waiting for another one to land, and let's face it, that could be a wee while. Although we've got 2 or 3 ideas up our sleeve, so you may not be forever before we come back. And indeed, some alternate contributors are lined up as well. If you like Something Who, please tell your friends, your family, your colleagues, your neighbours, your elders, and the odd savage. If you hate us, please don't tell a soul. Yeah, I guess just confirming that we try and make the recordings about once a month. It's been about 6 weeks, I think, since we did the last one. But it is a fun thing we do in our spare time. So, if it is a wee bit longer than that, then we'll get round to it eventually. Don't worry, as we enjoy doing it. But look, I just want to say thanks to Jim, to Rick, and to Giles for joining and for offering your thoughts and perspectives on these too. So, thanks for the chat.
Brilliant.
For having me.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Doodles.
Indeed. Bye. Can't believe we made it through the whole episode with that much troubleshooters.
I did debate putting together an alternate links section, links to local, but
says co-pilot, the wish I could speak. Dehumanization and systematic oppression inherent in colonialism.